Hello and welcome. I'm here with you today with something special. This is the HP Omnibook 7 Aero. So this is a 13.3-inch laptop. It is a tiny little beast, an ultra lightweight design, very thin and light chassis here, as we can see, quite portable, very easy to carry, an everyday laptop for most people, including students, those who want to couch surf, want to have something lightweight to carry with them, or just to manage all their household expenses and whatnot, or even, like in my case, to manage your YouTube channel. So this one has a lot of nice features baked into it. Let's talk about this laptop in this review, and we're going to take a look at everything that the Omnibook 7 Aero brings to us for 2025 and beyond. And just a quick disclaimer here as we take a look at the weight of this device here. So this was provided to me for a review by HP. That said, all of the opinions you'll hear in this video are entirely my own, and nobody has had editorial review of the content herein. As we can see here, it comes in at a very light 2 pounds and just 3 ounces. If we take a look at this in kilograms here, we're going to be surprised even further, just barely over the 1 kilogram mark. This is the kind of laptop you want to have stowed in your bag, basically to manage your life, to keep all of your digital life organized, and just always present with everything that you need on board. So that's it here. If you do like some of the content that I review, if you like the devices that I show you guys, please check the descriptions below. I often include purchase links with discount codes to help you save a little bit of money. And if you want to support the channel a little bit further and you really like our work, consider using the coffee link in the description below to give us a tip. It's a small gesture, but it really goes a long way to help independent creators such as myself. Now, let's get into this review and take a look at what the Omnibook 7 Aero 7 offers us. Now, port offerings can always be a contentious subject because it really varies on the size of the device, what the manufacturer's intent is for that particular device, the target market, and so on and so forth. But I think HP has done I think a pretty good job on offering ports here on such a small device, considering the XPS 13, one of its probably higher end competitors, only includes USB Type-C ports. So the fact that we have a variety of ports here, I think, is actually speaking well for HP's design language and also their goals in the market space. So on the left hand side of the device here, we had a single USB-A port, headphone and microphone combo jack. On the right hand side of this device, we have here from the right to left, we have another USB Type-A port, full-size HDMI 2.1 port, 2 USB Type-C ports. Now keep in mind, these are not Thunderbolt 4 or 5 ports because this is an AMD CPU. That said, though, you do have DisplayPort 2.1 output on one of these. One of these is 10 gigabits per second. The others are 5 gigabits per second. So I believe the USB-A ports are actually 5 gigabits, whereas the USB Type-C ports here are 10 gigabits per second, USB Type 3.2. And with a full-size HDMI 2.1, you get nice output here to hook up to all of your monitors. As for the design language itself, HP has gone with a kind of more subtle and subdued, I think, a language that works really, really well. It gives this very clean, professional, and a high-end aesthetic here. I like this kind of glossy logo here that's very futuresque and, ultra industrialist, and it looks very nice and clean. On the bottom of this device here, there's not much going on. We have, just this intake here for the fans. It's a little bit hard to tell because this is actually a very nice or a very fine grill pattern, but I'd assume that there will be probably 1 or 2 fans in here. A little bit hard to say. We may get this open in a later segment. And of course, we have those 2 traditional bottom firing speakers flanking each side of the actual chassis. You're not going to get the best sound here because it's such a small device. There's not a lot of space for the sound to echo, but it should be pretty sufficient for most of your workloads and even for enjoying some content in a hotel room when you're away from. Now, being that we are heading into 2026 here, this also is a HP laptop that is Windows Copilot Plus PC enabled. So that means you're going to have this AI logo here from HP, which is kind of HP's nomenclature and sort of labeling for AI enabled PCs. And that means we have not only Windows Copilot here, which is part of Windows 11 now, we also have HP's own flavor of this cooking into it called the HP AI Companion. After we go to the 700 screens that we need to start Microsoft Edge, my God, how awful is this experience? It's now asking us to sign into an HP account. I hate the fact that we have to do this, but there's no other option right now. Either you need to connect with a Microsoft account, a Google account, or create yourself a new account for HP in order to be able to utilize the HP's AI Companion. However, that isn't the only set of HP software that's available on this particular PC. You'll also have a bunch of other offerings from HP, whether you like it or not. Let's just talk quickly about all those different softwares that are included. So as you can see here, most of the HP softwares thankfully give you all of the terms and everything right up front, give you this option to manage your choices so you can decide what to turn on or turn off. And once we click here, we get into this laptop, and then this HP application, which I believe previously was called My HP on a few different other models, is now giving us all of the functionality and tweaks to control this particular PC. Now keep in mind, it is a little bit laggy, and that is one because I'm running on battery, and two is because it's running initially. This is its initial launch, and you also see that once it's loaded, it's got to plug in all of these different modules, audio, video, system control, etc. But you can go in here and you can administer your laptop. Right now you can see that it's set to balance mode. This is supposed to give us some awesome battery life on this, which we'll talk about a little bit later here. Performance mode here, of course, is if you want to do more capable tasks such as AI processing, perhaps a little bit of gaming. We'll see how that 840M in here, or the 800M series of iGPU fares in terms of gaming. It also has the ability to dim background windows, so there's a lot of features baked in here, and I would urge you, if you buy this laptop, to go through this HP and make yourself familiar with all of the particulars on this particular laptop. Of course, we've got ads now strewn even into the actual HP application. My goodness, as if we didn't have enough ads and overselling already. If we go into audio, what I really like about the HP laptops this year is because HP now owns Poly, which used to be the company called the company that would deal with all of the audio conferencing, the business communication, headphones, etc., that sort of nature for work. We love that technology being present into the HP devices. It means we're going to get very good audio. We get some audio processing as well. You can adjust the volume here, mute. You can turn on AI noise removal thanks to these AI-enabled CPUs and these Copilot Plus PCs. You can also adjust your microphone volume and settings, enable noise reduction on the microphone as well. Highly recommend that you leave that enabled. Of course, you have equalizers here, which is kind of neat. I mean, you can play with this if you like. I don't know why you would want to, but hey, if you're really up for that, it's here. So nice to see that. And of course, we're going to talk about the webcam here. We've also got the Poly Camera Pro on this one. As I mentioned, up to a 5 megapixel IR enabled webcam is optionable on this Omnibook 7 Aero. Depending on which particular model you get and in which environment, or excuse me, which region, you'll get different varying webcam options here. But this one here, so here we are. This is the Poly Camera Pro app. So this has a lot of the AI features baked in, as I've alluded to earlier. We don't need an account. Thank you very much. All right, so what is this? This is asking us to install Teams, Discord, etc. Sure, why not, I guess. This will allow us to, so if we use this complete install option, we can now use Poly Camera Pro as the application that serves a virtual camera instance to Zoom, Discord, and all of these other applications, giving you all of the benefits from the Poly software in terms of effects, AI processing, noise reduction, framing, and that can then be served over to your webcam utilizing software such as Discord, such as Microsoft Teams, etc. So we've got this logged in. We'll just close this out quickly, and you can see here's our webcam, and there's a few different things here we can do. So if we put spotlight, it will basically load this effect here. So you can see here said spotlight's kind of trying to focus in on us, and if we do retouch appearance, I guess this is going to do like a beauty enhancement if that's something that you prefer. We have some filter options here as well. So quiet background will try to focus in the background or focus out, blur the background. I don't know what this does. But you can see here we have the HP's 5 megapixel built-in camera here. So let's try one of these themes. Okay, I'm a little bit confused as to how this works. Front and center. Oh, there we go. So now it's zooming in using that 5 megapixel camera. So we're going to get some still pretty good quality here. However, we're not centered. Why is it not centering? So let's see. We want the background to be blurred. There we go. That's much better. So magic background, as it's called. And magic background uses the power of AI to enhance and transform your video effects with different styles, lighting, and effects, because that's just what we needed during our video conferencing. But anyway, it's nice to know that if you go into the Polymagic Pro software here, holy crap, there's a bunch of stuff in here that you can really play with to fine-tune your video conferencing experience. All right, so this is a little bit unusual. So we've got the Ryzen AI 7 350. So at least we have the latest generation Zen 5 CPU. Ryzen AI 7 350 is kind of their new naming convention. It's a little bit confusing. We have the 860M on board. 2 gigahertz is the base speed. 32 gigabytes of RAM at 7 7500 mega transfers per second, and that A60M graphics currently has a 2 GB allocation in terms of RAM to it. 1 TB SSD is on board here, and we've got Windows 11 Home running 24H2 is the current iteration of the installed software on this device. If we look at our network adapters, looks like we have a Realtek provided 8852BE Wi-Fi 6 card, so that means we're probably going to be paired with 5.3 in terms of Bluetooth versions, which is pretty decent. We have our display here. There's no other dedicated graphics. It's just the 860M integrated graphics here. For biometric devices, we have the facial recognition Windows Hello camera, as I mentioned. All right, we'll come back and take a look at some of these particulars. It's nice to see that HP is serving us these, ads. What is this? McAfee? No, thank you. We do not need McAfee. I've just uninstalled it. That was the first thing that I did when I got this PC and I set it up. Of course, you have the option to stream directly from this. So I assume you can click manage. And from the Polycamera Pro, you can set up a streaming service, for example, YouTube, Twitch. Very nice to see. You can even add any RMTP source here to stream directly from the actual Polycam Pro, which is pretty cool if you like to do streaming. But the fact that this doesn't have actually a DGPU to support gaming and high-end graphics, I don't know how well that's going to work here. Of course, you can record your meetings here as well, or you can record from the webcam directly from the Polycam Pro software if you so choose. Now, if you go into system control here, there's a few other things you can adjust. So you have the balance in different power modes here, balance, power saver, performance. You can adjust those as you like to your heart's content. And finally, we have another option here. So the last one is the well-being feature. So I see a lot of companies kind of trying to attack this well-being, screen time and controlling your digital interaction on a daily basis. But alas, what this does is it tracks your screen time, so you can see how long you've sat in front of the PC. Kind of handy if you use that kind of metric to track. And of course, you can have a reminder here which tells you, hey, take a break after every, let's say, 2 hours of sitting in front of the screen. So you can kind of get up, walk around. You also have a screen distance setting thanks to some of the other sensors that are present here. For example, there's a presence sensor. If you walk away, this will dim the screen or lock the PC. You have those kinds of options because this is a more professional or a work-oriented device. So they've borrowed some of the functionality from HP's professional lineup of laptops over to this Omnibook 7 Aero. So you can also set up screen distance. So this will tell you if you're sitting too close or too far away from the screen here, and it can give you an alert to say if you're sitting too close. So for example, if I choose like here, it says you're too close to your screen. And of course, up here now, there is an HP account. So you're going to need that to do more and more, particularly if you own an HP printer as well, to connect these two devices to get them paired, because now HP makes headphones thanks to Poly, and of course, lots of other additional peripherals, monitors, etc. So to make use of the whole ecosystem and to integrate everything together and control everything from one place, you will end up needing to create an HP account. All right, now let's talk about the CPU that's on board here, because we know that this is using the Zen 5 CPU family. So we have a Ryzen AI 7350. So this has an NPU on board, as we can see here. So this will allow you to accelerate all of your AI workloads. So anyway, a base clock of 2 gigahertz here with an 8-core, 16-thread processor. Plenty of power for anybody, unless you're doing the most demanding things. This is going to get you through a couple of years in terms of, writing, everyday usage, content consumption, things of that nature. You really won't have any issues here. This is going to be a fantastic device. So first of all, let's talk about what this brings to the table. So this here is a 13.3-inch laptop, a little bit more of a compact form factor than we're traditionally used to, but this is something we've seen kind of go by the wayside, as kind of 14 inches have replaced the 13-inch laptops, and 15 inches have now been superseded pretty much almost exclusively in the marketplace, with 16-inch laptops, with the exception of a few 15-inches still kicking around. That said, this 13-inch laptop comes with a 13.3-inch IPS display panel with narrow bezels, or micro edge as HP calls it, with an IPS display rated at 400 nits and 100% sRGB. It gets plenty bright, as you can see here. It's going to be pretty sufficient for most of your use cases, whether you're watching movies, late at night. You can bring the brightness all the way down here, or if you're going to be, working in an office environment, you've got bright lights everywhere, or even in the daytime if you're out under a tree trying to get that essay done before you need to, hit that deadline there. So you can have it for all the different use cases here. It's going to be very good for pretty much every kind of lighting condition that you want to use this at. And because it's an IPS, guess what? There's not going to be any of that annoying OLED glare, which I absolutely despise. So you're gonna be able to use this pretty much in any environment. That said though, because it is an IPS display, it's not gonna have the most broadest viewing angles in terms if you're viewing it on edge, but for the most part, I found this screen to be pretty good. We've moved a long way away from the IPS panels of yesteryear, just a few years ago when we had washed out colors, or even the TN panels. Thank God those are gone. Now, flanking this display here up top is also a webcam with a shutter switch, a physical shutter switch. Thank you, thank you, thank you, HP. I love physical shutter switches when it comes to privacy and particularly webcams. That said, we do have a Windows IR capable here infrared webcam that you can use biometric authentication using your face to unlock the laptop. And of course, being that this is a Windows laptop and a Copilot Plus PC going into 2026 here, we have HP's own flavor of goodies here. In this case, it's called HP's AI Companion. This is now getting into more and more laptops. We're starting to see across different brands and across different market segments, regardless of whether you're on gaming laptops or even on more work-oriented laptops or even mainstream laptops such as this AeroBook 7 here. Omnibook 7 Aero, excuse me, what a name. At full brightness here, 400 nits is plenty for any environment, and at 2K resolution, 2560 by 1600, this is unheard of in this type of size, and I think gives extreme visual clarity and high sharpness in terms of the content that you're viewing. The colors look excellent, they're nice and rich. Of course, you don't get those deep blacks, but they're not murky grays either, as we've seen with IPS panels of past years. If you're going to be enjoying any kind of content on here, I don't think you're really going to have much to complain about, considering that the portability and overall form factor of this device, the overall package that HP's put together here, is a very compelling option. So if you're looking for something that can do a little bit of work, a little bit of light gaming on the side, you can do all of your content consumption on it as well. And of course, because we have that full-size HDMI on board, connecting this to an external display and just hooking up, or using the USB Type-C port here to dock into an external display and to just have a nice desk setup, is going to be absolutely essential way to go. One cable connection, disconnect, and you're portable. One cable connection, you've docked into your entire desk setup again. All right, let's talk about performance here and just a few quick words here about the actual CPU and the components inside. So this is powered by a Ryzen AI Series 7 350 processor. Now this is part of the 2025 lineup of CPUs that was released. This one is a Zen 5 CPU, so it is the latest generation. The 200 series is actually a Zen 4 CPU, which has been recycled. Luckily, this one has the latest Zen 5 CPU. So this one is at 2 gigahertz base. Of course, if you toggle it into energy saver mode, it gets throttled quite a bit here. But normally it runs somewhere north of 3 gigahertz, as I've seen in everyday usage scenarios. We got 8 cores here, 16 threads, plenty for pretty much anything you can throw at it. It's paired with 32 gigabytes of RAM here. We have nice, fast 7500 mega transfers per second soldered RAM, and we do have 2 slots here, both of which are populated. So even though it here shows as 4 slots, I don't think it's actually set up in quad channel, but nonetheless 32 gigabytes is a great pairing for 2025 and beyond. We also have that paired with an NPU. Because this is the Ryzen AI series CPUs, we do get an NPU on board here, and it looks like the NPU can be used. I believe this is currently running for some LLM tasks that I was running in the background here, just to show you that the NPUs are starting to get usage, and you can have up to 16 gigabytes of RAM shared for the NPU, and you can allocate that dynamically through the software. And of course, being that this is a CPU with an integrated GPU here, we don't have any discrete graphics on this laptop. It's meant more for portability. We do have the Radeon 860M graphics. Now, as I demonstrate and will demonstrate later in the gaming section, you can do some gaming, but keep in mind that there's going to be some significant compromise in terms of textures and the presets that you can use. Despite that, I think it puts overall good performance there. If you are selective with the games, if you play a little bit of older games and don't mind turning down the resolution or playing with the scaling settings a little bit, you should be able to get playability from some older games on this particular laptop. And one other thing I want to point out here, considering that this device only has Wi-Fi 6 on board here, is that you're not going to get actually the fastest speeds in terms of Wi-Fi. So you can see here in this instance, as I'm trying to download Steam, we're not exactly getting groundbreaking speeds here, trying to download a 300 megabyte file. And my router is maybe across 2 rooms from here, I'd say, what, 25 feet maximum. So that is something to consider if you're going to be using this for lots of heavy workload where you need to transfer lots of data across networks. You may want to consider using a wired mode here to get yourself a USB Ethernet adapter, because the port offering on this laptop doesn't give you the ability to have a full-size Ethernet port. There is no connected network connectivity present here. All right, let's talk about a not so interesting topic now. Perhaps let's talk about this keyboard. So I love what HP has been doing this year with their actual design language. I love the fact that this is bold, kind of large lettering on their keys, which makes it much easier to read and to discern the letters. And I think visually it's just very appealing considering what they had in the prior years. Now, I really like this keyboard design and I like this keyboard layout as well. Considering this is only a 13-inch chassis, you couldn't possibly fit a numpad in here, so you're going to get just a centered QWERTY key keyboard here. That said, we have nice, tactile keys. Even though these are not actually mechanical keys, they actually feel pretty good to type on. They have nice, good feedback. They bottom out really nicely. They're really light and easy to press. The bold lettering makes it easy to, kind of see what you're pressing. And of course, with the backlight here, we've got two different levels. So we've got low, we've got high, and then we've got off. And what is also new here with this backlight is you can actually press and hold, which allow you to toggle the different durations for when the backlight should turn off. So the options here are 30 seconds, 3 minutes, or leave it always on. So you can choose to kind of do that. That is a very nice feature. I haven't seen that in many other laptops yet. I hope this is something that we'll get in more laptops in 2026 in the coming year. So now what we'll do is just do a quick, typing test here to kind of show you what the keyboard sounds like. Okay, so there you have it. Pretty good keyboard here. And of course, at the bottom of the keyboard here, we have a nice centered trackpad. Now, there's been a trend, a la the MacBook Pros to make these larger and larger. But you can see here that considering the size of this chassis here, this is probably the largest sized, trackpad that HP could have fit on here. So despite that, I think they've done a pretty good job here. This is a nice fit. And if we disconnect from this here, this is a nice smooth surface. I don't think this is glass, however. HP calls this the HP image pad. I don't know what the actual material is because it isn't actually specified in the actual specifications or any of the spec sheets for this laptop. I would assume that it's a Mylar-like surface that Lenovo uses on many of its devices as well. But alas, it's functional. You can do all of your multi-touch gestures. It's not scratchy or raspy. It's smooth to the touch. It does feel plasticky, so I would assume that probably a Mylar-like material here. Not really much to complain about here. A nice smooth one piece, uninterrupted, and the click sounds, as you can hear, are pretty decent as well. All right, then taking a look at the actual storage situation in this Omnibook 7 Aero, we have a Gen 4 SSD provided by SK Hynix. This one has a 1 terabyte drive that's pre-installed in here. Because it's such a small device, you're not going to get multiple slots. There's only one slot here for SSD, and it's pre-populated with this one here. If you look at the read and write speeds, though, they're kind of a little bit all over the place. We're seeing actually more Gen 3 speeds than, considering the fact that this is a Gen 4 drive. So a little bit disappointing there in terms of the speeds. I would have expected closer to 7,000 megabits per second, or megabytes per second, excuse me, considering we have a Gen 4 SSD in here. But alas, I believe they've saved a few bucks here by sourcing from SK Hynix these lower end SSDs. Despite that fact, in everyday usage, I don't think you're going to notice this at all for the most part between Gen 3, Gen 4, or even Gen 5, unless you're doing lots of sustained disk performance and usage here. So overall, a pretty good offering. Although if you need more capacity, you can always swap that out, which means you'll need to reinstall your Windows operating system. That is not such a nice thing. I always prefer to have an extra slot to expand your SSD storage. But alas, considering the size and the actual market segment that this is targeted at, that is acceptable. All right, now I want to talk about something that's pretty interesting here with this Zen 5 iGPU graphics here. So this is Borderlands 4. I'm playing at 1280p resolution. Let's just talk about the settings here quickly. So I'm playing at 1280p resolution, or excuse me, 800p resolution, so 720p, just a little bit higher than that. It's a 16 by 10 aspect ratio. VSync is turned on, and using the medium preset with FSR enabled and set to ultra performance quality and frame generation enabled with a mixture of medium and kind of low-ish settings here. I'm barely able to squeak out about mid 40s in terms of performance, but as you can see that the fidelity is, pretty trash. The enemies look like potatoes here unless I really get up close right into their face. I can't really even make out what the enemies are, which means the draw distances are pretty poor, and it's going to make for a pretty bad overall gameplay experience here. So I don't want to get oh, come on, guys. That's the last thing I needed. All right, let's get out of here. So the visual fidelity is not so great, but the fact is that we're playing almost close to 60 FPS here using the VSync lock. This is a 60 Hz display. It does have FreeSync enabled, or FreeSync support rather. So that means we're actually going to get some pretty decent response times, or pretty decent performance in terms of screen tearing and whatnot. You won't really get a lot of that. But let me just return back here so we can just talk about what's going on. In any case, here we can see that the CPU is running at about 85-88% here. So the GPU is running at 97%, running at 3.7 gigahertz, I think. 3 gigahertz on the CPU and 3.66 gigahertz on the GPU. Is that right? That seems insane. But 73 degrees on the GPU and 77 degrees on the CPU here, with 8 gigs allotted to the actual iGPU in this device. Let's see if we can crank the resolution here up to 1200p, and using ultra performance, if we can get somewhat better visual fidelity than with the potato level we have with the 1080 or 800p resolution. So now we do start to look a little bit better. We start to get some visual fidelity back, and the draw distances are still off, but at least you can tell where the enemies are and that they actually look like enemies and not just potatoes. Yeah, we can kind of see that there's enemies down there. It's a little bit more discernible from here than it was before. Now though, we're playing in the mid 40s, which really is not a good overall playable range for this game, because of the fact that this game can be very hectic and there's a lot going on the screen. That means you're gonna want to have as high of a frame rate on this game as possible. 60 FPS is absolute minimum here to have a good gameplay experience with this type of game. So if you're playing this at mid 40s, it's not going to be a very good experience. But just the fact, let's take a moment here and pause and talk about the fact that this iGPU can even run this game, which is a AAA game with all of the latest features and bangs and whistles and all that stuff, at basically 40 FPS or so, which is pretty impressive in and of itself. If we take a look at our sound meter here, this is running, of course, in the performance mode. Roughly 43 decibels. So we know that the fans are audible. They are certainly on, but they are not in any ways going to break, your back in terms of, or your eardrums in terms of the noise that they're producing. We'll just take a quick look at the thermals here on this device as well to show you that this is actually a very capable iGPU and that we have a lot to look forward to in the near future. So if we look here at the overall thermal performance of this, so we'll do some points here. And let's look at some of the heat figures. So we do get some 50 odd degree temps here up by the hinge, some 52, 53 degrees ish, 53 degrees. But overall, the wash area is nice and cool to the touch. There's a little bit of warmth here. It is a little bit hotter here, and of course up here near the hinge it's very hot. But of course that's just the way this device is designed to exhaust the heat, and I think it's actually doing a fantastic job for considering it's just a iGPU here that we're using to play this game. Okay, and we're now looking at a different type of game here. So this is more an isometric game. This is Titan Quest 2, currently in early access on Steam here. And we see that this game, so we'll talk about the presets that I've used here. So again, running at 1200p resolution. I'm using FSR here set in performance mode, and frame generation is turned on. We may need to actually crank this to ultra performance because we're actually getting some pretty awful frame rates here. And of course, the preset that I've selected here is medium. So let's see if we can get close to that 60 FPS magical figure. Not quite. We're about 40, mid 40s. It's a little bit. There is some artifacting certainly with the ultra performance scaling using FSR, and I'm also seeing some screen tearing here because I don't have VSync turned on, or sorry, turn on VSync. So let's see. And if we scale things down to the low preset, hopefully we can hit 60 FPS. Hey, thereabouts. Alright, so we're now getting a more stable experience, about 58 FPS, so you do need to do some finagling with settings, with the upscaling certainly, and with resolution as well to try to hit close to that 60 FPS figure. This screen does have FreeSync, or this panel does have FreeSync enabled, so you should be able to get some pretty smooth gameplay here, but although it's not going to be right out of the box with any of the pre-baked presets, you will need to do a little bit of work here to actually get the type of game experience that you probably want. So do be careful with that. Oh, and we died there. But anyway, this is just to show you that, still the iGPU on this device is capable of some pretty good gaming here. Our temperatures are at 76 degrees on the GPU and 77 degrees on the CPU, right about 80 degrees there. So not bad in terms of the overall thermal performance as well. And that means we're actually going to be able to play some games on here like this when you're away and you're just, finished your work session or your study session and writing that essay that you need to submit. You can get a quick game session in here, but just make sure that you tweak the settings and you're not. Alright, and just a quick few words here about the battery life of this laptop. So as you can imagine, being a 13-inch laptop, this thing is tiny and has only a 3-cell 43 watt-hour lithium-ion battery. That means you're not going to be winning any battery life championships here or any awards. However, that said, this one does support fast charging. You can get 50% charge in 30 minutes here using just only a 65 watt USB Type-C adapter. You should be able to find plenty of power sources for this. If you have a phone charger or tablet charger, you should be easily able to power this up and get up to 50% juice in just 30 minutes here. Now that said, the official rating from HP for this is about 12 hours in terms of the actual battery life in mixed use scenarios. With video playback, they claim about 15 hours or more than 15 hours, nearly 16 hours. But of course, being an older CPU, this is a Ryzen CPU here, you're not going to get those crazy numbers. But if you do manage to do a few things here, so for example, this thing can get incredibly bright at full brightness here. There's really no reason to have it at full brightness. At 50% brightness, it's actually quite usable. And if you're watching a movie, you probably want more of a cinematic experience, which means turning it down to about 30% or even 20% is pretty feasible in terms of the actual use case scenarios here. The other thing you'd want to do is click down here from the Windows control panel settings and definitely toggle energy saver. This will downclock your CPU, and of course it will make sure that the screen is not using as much power as well. Sipping power using the energy saver mode and having this set with the very low brightness, you should be able to get nearly a full day of work out of this, unless you're doing heavy tasks here, which I did test. However, it was not a very predictable scenario because the type of workloads, it's hard to make them consistent for every test. However, a full day, 7 to 8 hours, I think is very possible on this laptop. If they're claiming 15 hours and 45 minutes with video playback, 12 hours and 15 minutes with actual mixed use scenarios, I think taking about 60%, 60 to 75% of that would be a pretty fair scenario here. So do keep in mind that if you're looking for battery life, this is going to be some compromises always, and you'll have to play with these settings and toggle through them in order to get the best results. All right, well, then to conclude with my thoughts on the Omnibook 7 Aero 13-inch. I think this is a fantastic offering from HP for pretty much mainstream users of any ilk. If you're a student, if you're a telecommuter, if you're a worker that does business, if you just want to keep your house organized and all of your digital life organized with some AI capabilities to process your photos, to look at some text. But that said, HP has put together a very compelling package here. This is a beautiful keyboard. The lettering here is very nice. This white design and aesthetic is, something to be seen to believe. Like, it is gorgeous to look at and hold in the hand. Just 1 kilogram here, you're never going to feel this at all. You're not going to be complaining about weight for this particular device. Nice touches here, these things that lift up the device off the desk for some airflow. Right servicing here in terms of the ports, right selections made there. Sound is actually pretty decent at about 70 decibels of loudness. Be able to fill a small room, but if there's a lot of ambient noise, it's going to be struggling to try to give you the audible experience you want. So bring headphones as always, you know, some nice fan intakes here. It doesn't get very hot or loud, even in demanding workloads or even during gaming as well. And of course, with having Copilot on board here, you have all kinds of goodness that you can use to help with writing, with, you know, crafting, even a little bit of content creation. And having that AMD GPU, AMD CPU and iGPU combination here, which means you have all of the x86, you know, architecture on board. You're not going to be dealing with compatibility issues as we've seen with some of the Snapdragon laptops. Now, 13 inches, 2560 by 1600 2K display with FreeSync on board. Those 60 hertz is actually pretty fantastic at 400 nits. It's going to work great in any environment. The physical shutter switch here on the webcam is a nice bonus. Really appreciate that. And I think HP's put together a very compelling package with some really nice feature set, and especially the Poly audio and video studio if you're going to be doing a lot of video conferencing and a lot of work or even telecommuting. Now, do keep in mind the one somewhat kind of negative for my opinion on this laptop here is going to be the actual pricing. The pricing varies heavily from different regions. If you can find this on deals in the upcoming holiday season, it's certainly worth the pickup. If you can save a few $100s here, go ahead and grab this. If you can find an equivalent that has Lunar Lake CPU with better iGPU on board, that would also be a compelling option as well. A big shout out to HP and a special thanks for sending this out and allowing me to take a look at the Omnibook 7 Aero. I'm quite pleased here with a very nice design, a very well done design aesthetic, as well as industrial design of the overall device itself, the lettering, the keyboard. Not much to complain about here, other than perhaps throwing in an extra SSD slot in the next iteration of this device. If you like my content, click the like button, click subscribe, and click that notification bell so you're the first to know when there's new content available here. And of course, if you like any of the products I review or wish to purchase them, you can find links in the description below, often accompanied with discount codes to help you save a bit of money. And if you really like the channel and want to support our work, consider using the coffee link in the description down below to give us a tip. It's a small gesture, but it really goes a long way to help independent creators such as myself. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.